Hi guys, hello, welcome to my channel. I thought it'd be fun to tier rank some books today, specifically the ones that I have rated 5 stars, which has honestly been kind of a lot of books. I did actually pull some numbers. So specifically, since I got back into reading, which was like mid 2023, is that correct? No. 2022. So since like the summer of 2022 to today, I have read 286 books. 60 of those I rated 5 stars, which works out to about 20%. 20%, I'm not gonna lie, sounds kind of like a lot, but it has kind of got me thinking, are all of the books that I rated 5 stars still actually 5-star books? And that is what we're gonna find out today via the tier ranking system. So I do have 5 different tiers for our little graph, I guess you would call it. Originally for our bottom tier, I was gonna just put like an category, basically being like, I don't know what I was thinking kind of a thing. But honestly, going through my 5-star reads, I didn't have any like that. I do feel like, although I am very easy to please, I am also very kind of like realistic with myself. If I didn't like a book, I just didn't like it. Or if I thought it was okay, it was okay. I do rate kind of on a feelings basis versus like a critical analytic kind of rating system. And I do feel like I am someone that is kind of pretty in tune with how I'm feeling. So there wasn't any that I was totally like blindsided by where I just couldn't believe I had given it a 5 stars. So instead of having that to kind of like kick off our graph, we actually have as our bottom tier, respectfully, she's a 4. And that is basically just ones that looking back, which honestly, they're probably gonna be mostly like my older books. Looking back on them, I definitely wouldn't consider them a 5 anymore. I've read so many other things since then. Respectfully, she's a 4. That's our bottom tier. And then our next tier up is I got excited. Circling back to me being kind of like more of a feelings type of rater, sometimes when I'm done with a book, there'll be something that's specifically just like super exciting about it or something that surprised me about it, where normally I would have maybe rated it as a 4, but because of that specific special thing, I bumped it up to a 5. And now kind of looking back at it, she needs to be more of a 4. I just got a little excited. Next tier up, we have solid 5, and this is again exactly what it sounds like. These ones are just solid 5s. I really enjoyed them, loved everything about them. They're a 5. And then we have a couple of like top tier kind of categories. The next one up is Chef's Kiss. And these are ones that are basically solid 5s, but with like a little something extra. And then our top tier is My Heart Hurts. And these are ones that are basically our Chef's Kiss books, but they had even something extra. I don't know really how to explain it, but like there are certain books that I think back on, no matter how much time has passed, I just get like a gut-wrenching, just like, ugh. I wish I could reread it again for the first time. I miss the characters. I just have so many feels about that book. And again, just like a quick little reminder, I am a feelings rater. I'm not thinking about plot. I'm not thinking about character development. I'm not thinking about like the technical skills of the author. This is just purely based off of how the book makes me feel. So getting that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with our tier ranking, all of my 5-star books. I'm literally so excited. To kick us off, we have Dog Handling by Claire Naylor. This is actually a book that I really want to reread because I haven't reread it in a very long time. And this is actually the only book that predates the summer of 2022 because the first time I ever read this was in middle school, which looking back now as a 30-something adult, I was probably way too young to be reading this book. The whole reason I picked the book out was because it was called Dog Handling and it had like a little leash and this cute girl on the cover, so I thought it was gonna be about like dogs. So just having that in mind definitely shows I was probably too young to be reading it. It is a romance novel. I do really love it. I've talked about it several times. So I'm not gonna go into what this book is about or really what any of these books are about necessarily because it will be here entirely too long, but it has been a while since I've read this book, so I don't know really if it holds up the test of time, but because it has such an emotional hold on me, this one is definitely gonna go into Chef's Kiss. Moving on, next up we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. And this was obviously, oh, by the way, I put all of these books in the order that I read them. So these first ones are going to be obviously the ones that are more in 2022 and near the end of the list will be the most recent ones that I've read, if that makes sense. So anyway, Verity from Colleen Hoover. When I first started this channel / like got back into reading, Colleen Hoover was definitely having a moment. As a matter of fact, Colleen Hoover, like the hype around her books specifically is what got me back into reading. And although I did not understand the hype around Ugly Love, like literally my first leaving thoughts after finishing that book was like, that's it. But that being said, when I got to Verity, I was actually excited about that book. Looking back now though, I do feel like I'm going to put it into respectfully, she's a 4. It was really, really good at the time for me in 2022, but like now I've read so many other things and I like other things better. Next up we have The Summer of Broken Rules, and this I'm getting excited thinking about it. This one is going into I got excited. There's like a game aspect within this book, and I just thought that was like the most fun thing ever. And when I first read this, I remember just like raving and raving about it on my channel. But then I started seeing other people's reviews for this book, and nobody else seemed to like it as much as I did. But I still stand by this book. I think it's such a cute, fun summer read, but I don't think that it's necessarily a 5-star anymore. Next up we have The Dead Romantics. Ashley Poston has definitely become one of my auto-buy authors. I really, really enjoy her books. That being said, there is actually another book from her later on in this list, and both of them are getting a little bit of a demotion from my original thoughts. So for The Dead Romantics, I do think I'm going to put this one in respectfully, she's a 4. I really, really liked this book, but I don't think it's a 5-star anymore. Moving on, we have Better Than the Movies, and this is another one where I'm gonna put I got excited, which I feel like a lot of people are gonna be upset by. I feel like this is in like everyone's 5-star book list. And it is a really, really good, super cute book. And actually when I first rated this book, I gave it 6 stars. So this is getting like quite the demotion. The reason it got 6 stars instead of just like a plain 5, which I don't really do 6-star ratings anymore. But as far as this chart goes though, the ones that are in like My Heart Hurts, those are definitely gonna be kind of like the 6-star reads if I was to rate something 6 stars. But anyway, back to Better Than the Movies. The reason I gave this one such a high rating when I first read it was because it gave me so many freaking butterflies while I was reading it. But this one is one of those ones that like if I was to reread it again today, I don't think it would affect me nearly as much because I've just read so many romances since then. I still think I would enjoy it, so it's definitely still a solid 4, maybe even like a 4.5, but it's not quite a 5-star to me anymore. Next up we have Yoke, and this one is also gonna go into I got excited. This one has some like heavier topics in it. There's talk on like eating disorders, cancer, that kind of thing. So I was like, ugh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, because especially then I was really trying to avoid kind of like sadder topics. But I do feel like this author did a really, really good job at talking about these heavier topics, but still keeping me invested in the story and not really getting overly sad. Like I could feel for the characters, but I wasn't like crying or like really depressed about it or anything like that. And I definitely feel like that's what brought on the 5-star rating. I feel like it should have been more of a 4 from like the jump, but because I was just so surprised that I ended up liking it more than I thought I would, I gave it a 5. Next up we have Daisy Darker, and this one is going into a solid 5-star. I love this freaking book. And I was actually tempted to put it into Chef's Kiss, but the only reason it didn't is because there were a couple of like key twists in the book that I guessed almost immediately. So I wasn't necessarily surprised by much in this book, but I really, really enjoyed reading it. Next up we have Hidden Pictures, and this one is also going into solid 5-star. This one does have a little bit of a touch of I got excited as well, but I am still putting it in the solid 5-star because I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed this one. The little element of like I got excited was because of like the drawings that are in this book. I love just in general a book with illustrations in it, but this one, the illustrations actually are from the plot of the story. Basically we have a like 5-year-old boy, I'm pretty sure it was, and his drawings like progressively go from like a normal 5-year-old's drawings to like these really detailed, creepy, dark images, and you actually get all of those images in the book, but also you get a lot of them. Like when I first started the book, I kind of assumed that there would be pictures in it, but I thought it would just be like a handful and then like call it a day kind of a thing. They were kind of like spread out through the entire book, so I really, really enjoyed that. It was one of those things that I was like reading the book and enjoying the story, but also had that extra element of like looking forward to these pictures in the book. So definitely solid 5-star read. Next up we have my very first ever Riley Sager book, which was Lock Every Door. And this one we're also going to put into a solid 5-star. I really enjoyed this one, and I actually can remember quite a bit from it. I have a really bad memory when it comes to plots of stories. And again, this one was from kind of like earlier on in my getting back into reading journey. So I definitely feel like I should have forgotten the plot by now, but I do remember quite a bit from it. So I feel like that has to stay as like a solid 5-star. Because also too, while I was reading this one, I was like at the edge of my seat. I didn't guess anything. I never knew what was gonna happen. It was such a fun ride. So there's that one. Next up we have Scythe, and this one we're gonna put into Chef's Kiss. I love the concept of this book. I feel like it's really unique, and I've always kind of considered myself someone that didn't really care for sci-fi, but this book kind of opened my eyes to maybe I do. Next up I have the Inheritance Games, and this is going to be represented by the Hawthorne Legacy, which is the second book, which apparently is the only one of the series that I gave 5 stars to. I think I gave like 4, 5, and then 4 again. So I am going to be using the Hawthorne Legacy, but we are talking about just like the Inheritance Games in general, because if it comes to a series, I just kind of rate the series as a whole. I don't typically individually rate each book. That being said, for the Inheritance Games, I think I'm going to put this one in, this is another one that might upset some people, I'm going to put this one in respectfully. She's a 4. I really enjoyed this series, but I can't honestly remember much from it. I feel like I remember a good amount from like the first book, but I don't really remember much else. So I can't possibly put that as a 5. I remember there were certain things that I liked about it. Like I loved kind of like a little love triangle. I had a specific brother that I was like rooting for. I remember some of the little like puzzly type things that they had to do, but the majority of the plot, gone. Next up we have A Touch of Darkness. And if you have been following me since like the beginning of my channel, this might shock you, but I think I'm gonna put this one in, I'm like so second guessing myself. I think I'm gonna put this one in I Got Excited, which is crazy. This is the very first spicy fantasy romance I ever read. After I read this book, a whole new like reading world was opened, and I specifically like hunted out spicy fantasy romances. So I think there is definitely a lot of like I Got Excited involved in this series. I think actually, you know what, I'm gonna put it in 5 star. Solid 5 star. I do feel like if I was to reread it today, I would still really enjoy it. Like I don't think it's really lost its sparkle necessarily for me. That being said though, I have read so many other fantasy, spicy or not romances since then, and I don't know that I would feel the same about this one as some of those ones. Moving on. I feel like I'm talking about some of these for entirely too long. The next book that we have is The Love Hypothesis, and where am I gonna put you? I think I'm gonna put this one also in I Got Excited. This one is another one that I'm like really tempted to put into a solid 5 star, but this is definitely one of those ones that like if I was to reread it again today, I don't know that I would feel exactly the same. And I'm putting it in I Got Excited versus like respectfully, because this is one where I feel like the tension started building between the couple almost immediately, and I remember getting really excited about that. Like I immediately started getting like little butterflies and things. Also, this was my very first Ali Hazelwood book and I loved it, so I was excited about that as well, because especially at the time, a lot of people I feel like were talking about Ali Hazelwood. I don't feel like she's an author that like people ever really stopped talking about, but at the time specifically, she was like especially talked about, if that makes any sense. Moving on. Our next book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and this one we're gonna put into My Heart Hurts, but it's very close to being a chef's kiss because of Henry. Like there is a specific character in this book that I have connected with, or I feel connected to, more than any other character in the 280 something books that I have read in the last couple of years. I will never get over Henry. Moving on to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This one is gonna go into I Got Excited. I almost put it in solid 5 star, but I feel like it's more of an I Got Excited. The little baby romance that was in there really like warmed my heart. Like still thinking about it, I do really enjoy the characters. Like they were just such cute, wholesome, quirky characters, and they had a cutesy kind of like flirtatious little bit of like a start to a romance. So I think I excitedly gave it 5 stars, but I don't know that it would necessarily hold up. Next up, speaking of cozy fantasy, we have The House on the Cerulean Sea, and this one we're gonna put into solid 5 star. This one is a cozy fantasy that I really enjoyed. This is probably like one of my favorite cozy fantasies that I've read, and I do still feel like this one would hold up. That being said, I've since tried reading another TJ Klune book and I did not enjoy it nearly as much. But as far as this specific book, loved it. I thought it was so cute. There were so many cute little characters. This one's basically about like a magic social worker that goes to the house on the Cerulean Sea that is supposed to hold like the most dangerous orphan children, and you get to meet the kids and things like that, and they're just so adorable and so cute and misunderstood. It was a really sweet, cute book, so definitely recommend that one. Next up we have A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows, and I'm already getting giddy thinking about this one. So this one is definitely going to be going into Chef's Kiss. Actually, you know what? We're going to put this one in My Heart Hurts. I had such a good time with this freaking series, but I also feel like I had a really good time, like an especially good time reading this one because me and my sister were reading it at the same time. We both completely blew through the first 3 books in the series over a weekend, and we were both absolutely obsessed with it. It was so, so good. And just by reading this one series, Holly Renee like became an auto-buy, or at least an auto-read author for me. Next up we have The Cruel Prince, but specifically I gave The Queen of Nothing, which is the 3rd book, the 5-star rating. But again, when it comes to a series, we are just going to talk about the series as a whole. This one I think I'm going to put into solid 5-star. It was definitely different than what I was expecting because at the time this was really, really big on YouTube when I read it. A lot of people were talking about it, and specifically a lot of people were kind of recommending it based on it being a enemies to lovers romance. There is definitely like a little element of an enemies to lovers type of situation, but the romance as a whole for the entire series plays such a teeny tiny part. I feel like it is misleading to lead with that. So it's definitely different than what I was expecting. That being said, I feel like I enjoyed the series more because of that, because the romance actually wasn't that big of a deal in the book. The politics, the magic, the world building, like there's so many other things involved. I didn't miss the romance at all. Next up, we have The Never King, and this is one of those ones that I feel like I gave you the disclaimer for in the beginning. Again, I am a feelings-driven reader, and this is basically an erotica series about Peter Pan. You guys, I absolutely loved this series, and we are putting it in Chef's Kiss. Honestly, I'm very close to putting it in My Heart Hurts, but I don't know if it's quite to that level. But this is absolutely Chef's freaking kiss. I had read a couple of, maybe not erotica, but just like spicy books in general that involved kind of like Disney retellings that weren't really that Disney inspired. Like they were inspired by Disney, but they weren't retellings. Let me say it that way. I have learned through the process of this book and kind of reading those other ones that I definitely prefer a retelling versus an inspired by. And I guess kind of like going into The Never King, I was kind of expecting that inspired by kind of a thing, but the main male love interest in this book is Peter Pan, and our main FMC is not Wendy, but she's like Wendy's great grandchild or something like that. And the book actually does take place, like the setting of the book is Neverland. So you actually have elements of Peter Pan. There is magic. It was so good. Also, I think this is one of my very first like Why Choose books that I ever read. And although this one had some like pretty intense, like I do feel like this is the most, like the spiciest book I feel like I've ever read. The whole Why Choose concept has been an instant fave of mine. I feel like it's very found family vibes and I absolutely love it. Next up we have King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair, who is also the writer of A Touch of Darkness. And this one, whereas A Touch of Darkness is kind of like a Hades and Persephone retelling, King of Battle and Blood is more of like a vampire romance. So this one, that being said, I'm gonna put it into solid 5-star, but also there is a touch of I got excited involved in this one as well, because again, this one is a vampire romance and it was the very first spicy vampire romance I ever read. And vampire spicy romances are definitely one of my top faves. I haven't read that many, but every single one that I've read has been just Chef's Kiss. That being said, I don't actually feel like this book should be in Chef's Kiss because I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember a whole lot from it, and I read the second book as well and I did not really care for the second book. Moving on to Mr. Wrong Number. This one we're gonna put into solid 5-star. Lynn Painter is just one of my go-tos for fluffy romances. Every single book that I've ever read from her has either been a 4 or a 5-star. I am completely obsessed with her writing. Speaking of authors that I really love, the next couple of books are both from Abby Jimenez. That being said, I do think they're both gonna go into I Got Excited. I don't know if they would hold up to the test of time. Actually, you know what? Yours truly is gonna stay in I Got Excited because this one kind of deals with a main character that has anxiety, and as someone that deals with anxiety myself, felt like she represented anxiety really well. So that kind of made me rate it maybe higher than I would have normally. And then as far as like Part of Your World, I think I'm gonna actually put that one in respectfully. She's a 4. I did really enjoy it, but I don't remember a whole lot from it. Next up, we have a couple of books from Emily McIntyre, and they're both books from the same series, which is the Never After series. They're not erotica, but they are like dark, spicy romances, and they kind of have like a mafia style vibe, which again was something that I wasn't sure that I was gonna like going into them, but I actually really enjoyed. Scarred. The ending was very weird for this one, so I'm actually gonna put this one in I Got Excited because honestly the ending is what I remember the most from this one. and I remember being really like, what is going on? Like, it felt disjointed from the rest of the story, and that kind of annoyed me. But at the time I was excited about it, so I still gave it 5 stars, but I don't know that I would give it 5 stars today. Wretched, that one is gonna go into solid 5 stars. With a little element of I got excited. I went into this one thinking it was going to be my least favorite from the entire series, and it ended up being one of my favorites. So that one I feel like I rated higher because I just got really excited for it. But kind of looking back on it, I do remember quite a bit from it, and I do feel like I still would give it 5 stars. So that one's gonna stay at solid 5 star. Next up, we have the infamous A Court of Thorns and Roses series, being represented by A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book. And honestly, I do feel like I gave both the first and second book 5 stars. I really love, personally, like the setup of stories, so I tend to really enjoy the first and second books are usually my favorite from a series. That being said, what should I put it in? I'm gonna put it in solid 5 star. I really loved that series, especially when I was reading it, but it was kind of like one of my very first like fantasy romance series that I ever read, and I feel like I've read so many other things that have made me more excited since then. Next up we have Fourth Wing, and this one I am gonna put in Chef's Kiss. I freaking loved this series, or this book. I did a whole reading vlog on it just by itself. I did a full reading vlog on the second book. I don't think I'm gonna do it again for the third, but like, yeah, I really enjoyed the series. I loved everything about it. Speaking of, another thing that I loved every second of, the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I feel like if you've been on my channel for any amount of time since I've read this book, you have probably heard me talk about this series. I am so obsessed with the concept, specifically of just like the Princes of Hell. That being said, this one's going straight into My Heart Hurts. I was just obsessed with the series. I love everything about it. Next up we have Hellbent. And this one we're gonna go into respectfully, she's a 4. With a touch of I got excited. I read Ninth House, and that one was kind of disappointing. I was expecting so much more from it because everyone was like really obsessed with it at the time. And for me personally, I did end up loving the book by the end, but it took me so long to get into it. So I was really nervous going into Hellbent, but that one picked up right away. I think it's because it's like the second book in a series. Everything was already started, you know what I mean? I didn't have to like build a story or a world. So going into Hellbent, you kind of like went straight into the action, and I was invested and enjoyed the process of reading like the entire book. So originally I feel like I gave it a higher rating because I got excited. I was surprised by the fact that I liked it more than I was expecting to, but kind of looking back, I feel like it's more of like a respectfully, she's a 4. Still a very good book, and I am waiting for the third book to come out. Moving on to Serpent and Dove. I'm gonna put this one into Chef's Kiss. I really enjoyed Serpent and Dove, like the series as a whole, but then also the spin-off series, which is also in this list, and I think I'm just gonna jump ahead a little bit and do this one now as well. So this one is The Scarlet Veil. In general, Serpent and Dove, I'm giving it Chef's Kiss because there's just so many things going on. Like, I loved the first book and I remember a lot from it. But then also, as far as like the rest of the series goes, you meet so many different characters. It does have like an overall found family type of vibe by the end. And I feel like there was just like so many different storylines and like adventures and things throughout this 3-book series. And as far as The Scarlet Veil, I'm also going to put in Chef's Kiss. This one had to do with vampires, and again, I love them. Next up we have Brutal Prince, and this one I'm sadly also going to be putting into respectfully, she's a 4. This is a book that I wanted to read for like the longest time because the cover was super cute, and I finally found my like excuse to get it because one of my fave booktubers, Alexa Ray, was talking really highly of that series. So I ended up purchasing the entire thing and I did actually really enjoy this first book. I do feel like it's like one of my favorites from the entire series. But that being said, the series as a whole has definitely lost my interest. I've read 4 books out of the series so far. 2 of them I really liked. 2 of them were kind of very meh for me. And yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things that if I was to read Brutal Prince again today, I don't think I would like it as much as I originally did. Next up, we have 3 books from the Chestnut Springs series. This is a series that a lot of people love, me included, as you can tell from the fact that half of the series is in my 5-star rated list. That being said, there's definitely a little bit of like a pecking order to them. First off, Heartless is going into Chef's Kiss. This one I think was my favorite of the series. This one was the grumpy dad / nanny romance. I loved the nanny character. I can't remember anybody's name. I read these too long ago. As far as Reckless goes, I do feel like this one, is gonna go into I Got Excited. I really enjoyed this one, and I do honestly still feel like it would be a 5-star or like a 4.5 maybe. There was like a trope involved in that one that's not really my favorite, and I did enjoy it more than I thought I was going to, which I feel like is why you know, I got that like I got excited kind of thing. But looking back, I don't think I liked it as much as the other ones, specifically because out of these 3 books, Reckless is the one that I remembered the least of. Like I can't really remember much of what happened in that book. That being said, going into Hopeless, which is the 5th and final book, that one sounded like my least favorite kind of plot-wise. But it ended up being really, really good. So I'm gonna put this one in solid 5-star. It ended up being one of my favorites. And my camera battery's about to die, so I'm gonna switch that out and I'll be right back. We're back, and not gonna lie, I feel kind of weird just like jumping right back in because it's been like an hour. But we left off with Light Lark, and Light Lark is gonna go into a solid 5-star. I really enjoyed Light Lark. I felt like it had a really cool, unique kind of concept, like competition and stuff like that. There is a little bit of a love triangle, which I thought I wasn't gonna like, but I ended up liking it. I've gone back and forth on it, but it is a series that I am still kind of like working my way through, and I'm excited to kind of like keep reading every time like a new book comes out. So that one is definitely a solid 5-star. And then next up we have Half a Soul, and this one is going into Chef's Kiss, but it's very close to My Heart Hurts. I absolutely loved Half a Soul. I would definitely probably consider it more of like a cozy fantasy romance. It was very low stakes, but it was just so cute. I loved our main character. It's basically about a girl who has half a soul and kind of like the struggles of her just like existing because she's very different because she doesn't have an entire soul. She doesn't get embarrassed. She doesn't get scared. She doesn't get like worried about like the things that normal people do. And I don't know. I feel like there was probably like a little lesson in there somewhere, but like just generally the book was so cute and I really loved it. It's definitely one that like I would recommend to like anyone. I absolutely love that book. Next up we have The 7-Year Slip, also by Ashley Poston, which we kind of briefed over earlier. And where am I going to put that one? This one, I think I'm going to put in I Got Excited, which I feel a little bit bad about, but like the reason I'm putting it in this category, although I absolutely loved it when I first read it, one, I don't really remember the plot that much. Like I remember the general plot, but I don't really remember like the specifics of what happened. And 2, I've seen so many videos of other people's reviews where they specifically like point out quotes and things like that that I don't remember, and they just seem to like love it so much more than I did. So I feel like, I know these are like my ratings, but like I feel like I can't really give something a 5-star rating if like other people seem to like something way more than I do, you know? Moving on to Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. So originally I was gonna put this in solid 5-star because again, I absolutely love this book, but I'm kind of thinking it should go into Chef's Kiss. No, we're gonna put it in solid 5-star. The only reason I'm kind of like teetering back and forth is because I do just like generally, I feel like I like the concept of the Princes of Hell more than the execution of it in some instances. Like this book in particular, the spin-off series, is about the Prince of Envy, and he was like my favorite from the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I was so excited to get like a full book of just him, and I'm gonna be honest, the book was kind of slow for me to get into. It took me a while before I actually like got that like groove where you just want to keep reading, but I did get there and I did end up really loving the book. Moving on, our next one is Wicked Beauty by Katie Roberts, and this is actually the 3rd book in the, what's this series called? Dark Olympus series, I believe this is called. And this is essentially a dark, spicy, kind of mafia style romances that are inspired by Greek mythology. And I have been thoroughly enjoying this series. It's not like my most favorite series in the world, but I'm definitely very much enjoying it. And Wicked Beauty was definitely one of my favorites from the entire series. That being said, I think I'm gonna put it in solid 5-star. Next up is Bride, and this one is also gonna go into I Got Excited. I raved about this book right after reading it. I was so excited for it, not only because it's from Ali Hazelwood, which earlier, like we talked about with The Love Hypothesis, I really loved that book. So going into another book from her, I was really excited. But then also on top of that, this one is her very first paranormal romance. And I do remember really enjoying this book, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I cannot remember basically a single thing from the plot of this book, so I can't possibly put it as a 5 now. As I'm like going through these books, I feel like respectfully She's a 4 is definitely like a solid 4, whereas I Got Excited is more like 4.5s. Like they're almost 5s but not quite there. Next up we have Red Rising, and this one, Chef's Kiss. Yeah, we're gonna stick with Chef's Kiss. Again, kind of like circling back with what I said with Scythe, I always consider myself someone that doesn't really like sci-fi, but literally every time I read a sci-fi book, they become my favorites. I absolutely love them. And honestly, I was just thinking, or I was gonna say that like the plots are so unique, but it's probably because I don't really read sci-fi. So obviously the plots are gonna be unique to me, because I've never read them before. And for this one in particular, I am just talking about like just Red Rising and not the actual entire series. If I was doing that, I would probably put it in more of like a solid 5-star. I really enjoyed the series, but it did kind of like lose my interest a little bit as it went on. Like loved the first book, loved the second book, but the third book was very slow for me. Next up, we're gonna go to Assistant to the Villain. And this one we're gonna put, where should I put this one? We're gonna put this one in solid 5-star, but this one also has a little bit of like, I got excited. I do also feel like this one was kind of like more unique, super, super cute. It's very kind of like almost cartoony to me, like the ridiculousness of the characters. But I also did find myself giggling a lot while I read Assistant to the Villain. Maybe it should be Chef's Kiss. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we're gonna do Chef's Kiss. Actually, I have very similar feelings to this one as I do with our next book, which is Butcher and Blackbird, where I absolutely, this one also is gonna go into Chef's Kiss. I absolutely loved the first book because it is so different. So Butcher and Blackbird is basically a rom-com style romance about 2 serial killers. I thought the concept of that was so freaking fun. Also, just like the writing style and kind of the humor of the author, I think is fantastic, and definitely makes these books more unique. However, the thing that kind of ties Assistant to the Villain and Butcher and Blackbird together is the first books in the series were Chef's Kiss, but the books following them kind of lost their appeal a little bit, just for the simple fact that like it was no longer that new exciting concept. Next up, we have Frontrunner by Elsie Silver, and this is the 3rd book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. And this series actually predates Chestnut Springs, but for some reason no one ever talks about this series, and I think it is so stinking good. And the Frontrunner we're also going to be putting into Chef's Kiss. Actually, you know what, we're going to put it in solid 5-star. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the series as a whole, but this one was definitely my favorite out of the series. This one kind of involved like the villain type character. They are cowboy romances, so there is no actual like villain. I feel like the word villain is very like fantasy coded, but like the villain, bad guy, whatever of the group, this is his story, and the female of that story is also a veterinarian, which is a job that I wanted as a child. So I just really loved this one. It was really cute, loved it. Next up, we have Ice Planet Barbarians, and technically this is the cover for the first book, but we are talking about this as a whole for the series, and this is going straight into My Heart Hurts. I am completely obsessed with this series. And actually there's another kind of like similar themed series that I'm also going to jump ahead a little bit and add to My Heart Hurts as well, which is the Cowboy Colony Mail Order Bride series by Ursa Dax, because the aliens in the Cowboy Colony series are just literally the sweetest, most endearing, cutest freaking characters I have ever read about. It's impossible not to fall in love with them. Like it's the cutest series. There is some spice in them, but there's not nearly as much as like the Ice Planet Barbarians. Ice Planet Barbarians I would consider more of like erotica. There's definitely a lot more spice, and I do feel like they kind of like focus more on that in those books within the plots. But like as far as the Cowboy Colony one, for the most part you only get like 1 to 2 scenes, and they're near the end of the book. I love both of these sets of books to freaking pieces, and I highly recommend them. If you don't mind spice, read them. Moving on, we're getting close to the end here. So next up we have Happily Never After, another book by Lynn Painter. This is one of her adult ones. She kind of like comes out with, like every year I feel like she comes out with 1 YA and 1 adult book, and I feel like I like both kind of categories equally. However, I will say Happily Never After is definitely one of my favorites overall, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and put that one in solid 5-star. I feel like I do remember quite a bit from that book, and I enjoyed the overall plot a lot. Thought it was a fun concept, so there's that one. Now we're gonna start getting into more of our heavy hitters and our like most recent reads, like within the last few months. And kicking us off, we have Quicksilver, which this one is going into Chef's Kiss. I absolutely loved this book. I have no notes. I absolutely loved everything about this book. Cannot wait for the next one. Our next heavy hitter that we have is Spark of the Everflame, and this one is kind of representing not only the first book but also just like the series as a whole, and that is going straight into My Heart Hurts. The chokehold that this series had on me. I basically ate, slept, and breathed these books and nothing but them for a solid week. Obsessed. Next up we have probably one of my most favorite books that I've read, just period, and that is Long Live Evil. So that is definitely going into My Heart Hurts. which is kind of crazy to me because I have heard mixed reviews for this series. Like, I feel like some people really like it or some people just really don't. First 2 nights that I read this book, I was up until 4 a.m. both nights. I loved the story and I really, really loved the characters. I think that is specifically like the characters and their relationships between each other and their interactions are what really put it into the heart hurts category versus like the chef's kiss category. This is one where like I have the most visceral, like every time I think about this book and like the characters, specifically 2 of them, my heart literally aches. Like I cannot wait to get back into this world and to read more about these characters. I miss them so much. Like I feel like I'm this book's #1 fan. Like I'm obsessed with it. Moving on, we have another series. Again, this is like the first book in the series, but we're talking series as a whole. Bonded by Thorns, again another My Heart Hurts. This one is a spicy fantasy romance that is inspired by Beauty and the Beast, but it's also a why choose. So we have the Beauty and 4 beasts, and they each kind of like represent a different season. So that kind of concept was also super fun for me. I loved everything about the world and the plot building. Also, again, because it is a why choose, there is kind of like multiple different types of relationships. And one of them, I'm not gonna like talk details about it because I don't want to give anything away, but one of them is between 2 characters specifically, and it is quite literally one of my favorite couplings of like any book I've ever read. Like I am just obsessed with this pairing. Definitely My Heart Hurts. And next up we have Serpent and the Wings of Night, and this is actually going to represent the first 2 books in this series because frankly those are the only 2 that I've read so far, but that one is also going into My Heart Hurts. I love this book. I feel like this one is also another one that's actually gotten kind of mixed reviews. Like originally when I first wanted to read it, it had a lot of really good reviews, but then like a year later, by the time I actually got my hands on the book, I started feeling like I was hearing a lot more negative ones, or people basically just saying that it's like overhyped. In my opinion, perfectly hyped. The competition in this book and then just kind of like the building of the romance was literally just my favorite thing ever. And again, when I think back on it, it makes my heart ache. I loved it so much. We only have a handful of books left, and next up we have Gleam, which I think is the 3rd book in the Plated Prisoner series. And again, we are going to kind of consider this the series as a whole. And so far, I think we're going to go into, should it be Chef's Kiss or Solid 5? I think it's going to go into Solid 5. I really enjoy it, and there is a character in, I think it was the 2nd book that like broke my heart. So I do have some strong feelings. Next up we have Someone Else's Shoes, and this one we're gonna go into I Got Excited. This one is kind of more of just like a regular contemporary fiction. It's basically about 2 women who end up accidentally switching their gym bags and having to live in each other's shoes essentially, and literally actually. But that being said, going into this book, I was expecting just like a really cutesy, fluffy kind of reading experience, and that is not what I got. Things spiral out of control on both women's sides of the story. It just generally took so many different twists and turns that I was like not at all expecting, and I ended up really enjoying this book. That being said, because I was so surprised by the book and like the reading experience, I feel like I gave it a higher rating than I probably would have otherwise. So I feel like now it's more of like a 4.5 kind of style territory. Next up we have The Confidence of Wildflowers, and this one, we're gonna put this one in Chef's Kiss. I literally loved everything about this book. It made me laugh, it made me cry. Also, to introduce me to the age gap trope. This is the very first age gap book I've ever read, and I actually really enjoyed it. So I definitely want to look out for more age gap romances. Next up we have Metal Slinger, and this one is also going into Chef's Kiss. This is another one that I had such a good time reading. It did get a little slow in the middle of it, but so much happened in the front and the back of the book that I didn't mind the slowness in the middle. And the ending of this one like totally blew my mind, dying to see what happens in the next one. And now we're down to our last 2 books. Second to last we have Binding 13, and for this one I am clumping Binding and Keeping 13 together. This one's going straight into My Heart Hurts. This is another one that like every time I think about it, I literally have like a physical reaction. I'm obsessed with this series just in general, and I think it would fit more into like Chef's Kiss. I've read the first 4 books, but the 13 books in particular, I wish I could reread them for the first time over and over again. This is another series where I feel like it's really hyped, but like appropriately so, because I just cannot get enough. And then last but certainly not least, we have Paper Princess. And this was actually gifted to me by one of you guys. So thank you so much for bringing this new obsession into my life, because that is what it is. I am obsessed with the characters and with this series. I've only read the first 2 books in it so far. By the way, this is going into Chef's Kiss. And I've only been able to read the first 2 books so far just because I'm on a book buying ban, so I can't buy them. Also, Kindle Unlimited does not have them. They are not available at my library. Like, I cannot for the life of me get my hands on these freaking books. So I might end up breaking my book buying ban to get those because I cannot wait any longer, you know? And honestly, if I'm like that obsessed with like getting the books, then it's worth breaking the book ban, is my thought process. Anyway, those are all of my 5-star rated books from 2022 to now. And I gotta be honest, the majority of them are still within the 5-star categories. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 17 of them have been slightly demoted, but the majority of them still within the 5-star realm. So that tells me if I give something a 5-star, I pretty much mean it. There is gonna be the occasional instance where I just get a little overexcited, but for the most part, if I say it's 5-star, to me, it is a 5-star.